First of all, from a strength point of view, our products are as strong as concrete when it comes to bending strength, and they are 1.5 stronger than concrete when it comes to compressive strength. One of the unique properties that we have are the very, very high impact strength. So if you would drop, let's say, a concrete tile to the ground, or of course a ceramic tile to the ground, it would shatter to pieces. If you would drop a Criaterra tile to the ground, it might get a dent in the edge, but it will not shatter. So actually the resistance and impact strength is very, very high. And when it comes to earthquakes, impact strength is actually the quality that you need within products.
Hello everyone and welcome back to the Clean Techies podcast, where we interview climate tech founders and VCs to discuss all things building and investing to solve the biggest challenge of our generation, climate change. This is episode 89 of the show. I'm your host, Silas Maynard, and thank you for joining us on today's episode. If you are a returning listener, we ask for you to help us in two specific ways. We ask that you please, if you have not already, subscribe and go follow us on YouTube as well. As you know, a lot of effort is put into this show, or perhaps you don't know, but I can assure you there's quite a lot of work that goes into it. So your support on the listener side is very, very helpful. Secondly, we'd like you to share this episode with two people that you know, one in particular that you think may like this content, and somebody who you think might actually disagree with this content, somebody who's maybe a skeptic on climate change or the solutions that are being kind of created out there. It'll really help us to spread the word of the show. And if you enjoy the show, if you're returning, of course, please leave us a review on Apple Podcasts, as it's very, very helpful for us to expand the reach of the show. And then any founders listening as well, we're always glad to make any introductions to capital or partnerships that we can. So without further ado, quick thank you from our sponsors. NextWave Partners are experts in talent acquisition, recruitment, and retention across the climate tech, renewables, and ESG spaces globally. So if your team is growing or you are looking to make a career change, please reach out to NextWave at next-wavepartners.com or reach out to one of their consultants directly via their LinkedIn page. Okay, let's get into today's episode details. So today we are joined by the founder of Criaterra, Adital Ela. Adital is an industrial designer by education and profession who was seeking the potential to make fully circular building products. She was inspired to do this when visiting India. She saw how clay chai cups were used and then tossed to the ground to return to their original form of dirt, essentially, making a very circular type of production. And those in particular are produced using no kilns. It's just dried by the sun. So after 12 years of kind of going over this in her mind from that original inspiration, she eventually set out to build Criaterra. And in essence, they are an R&D company that aims to license out their IP for the production of fully circular building products. For the time being, they have focused on their MVP, decorative non-structural tiles. It's very difficult to get approval for structural items. In the meantime, they're focusing on these tiles. And then in this conversation, we speak about her journey and the challenges of building a company like Criaterra. For me, I think the biggest takeaway and inspiration is her resiliency. She has stuck with this for over 10 years. Ever since she set out to build this company, it's been about 10 years since she began that. And despite the difficulties around funding and finding kind of willing and capable partners, she's persevered and continued down the path. So that to me was very, very inspiring when somebody really knows genuinely what they want to do, and they pursue it at all costs, right? So without any further delay, let's get into the show. All right, welcome to the show, Adital. How are you doing today?
I'm great, thank you very much.
I'm super excited to have this conversation. I think it's going to be pretty interesting. I'm somebody who came from a pretty traditional upbringing in the middle of nowhere in Wisconsin with a lot of traditional values. Maybe not making these types of products, but some similar things that I'm pretty fascinated by what you're doing. So maybe just start us off with telling us a little bit about yourself and kind of what you're doing today.
Okay, wonderful. So I'm Adital Ela. I come from the background of industrial design. I started studying industrial design at the mid-90s, and very, very early on, I was very, very frustrated with the agenda of our studies, and kind of the thinking that you have to take raw materials and apply to them chemicals and heat and pressure in order to make products that are totally disconnected to the biosphere. So very early on, I was looking for a different path, and this was 95. The term sustainability was coined only in 1992. So there was no much to follow, but I was very intrigued to look for a different way. And this is when I started exploring the body of knowledge of what was eco design at the time, and later on became sustainability design. I continued and did a master's in the Design Academy in Eindhoven. That was one of the first programs globally approaching these topics. And I understood that in order to really rethink the way we approach design, we need to learn from the way things were done before the modern times, before the heat retreat became the way we make products. So I was intrigued to learn from different cultures, how they approached the production of products, how they approached buildings. And as a second generation to a family of builders, at one point understood that if I take the body of knowledge of sustainability design, of the way cement was made once, of the way buildings were made once, and apply to this the most advanced science and technology, there might be a way to leap towards a new reality of low carbon circular products that are produced with very low investment of energy. And this is how Criaterra became around the mission to achieve fully constructive products without going beyond the boiling point of water.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. So that helps us understand the origin. So if I make sure I understand that correctly, it sounds like a little bit of in your family, there was kind of a history of people building things and creating these types of products in tradition. And I guess I'd be keen. I had this actually slotted for towards the end of the show, this question, but I'm kind of curious to understand your general thoughts about this idea of kind of creating a new technology. A lot of times people are like, hey, we got to come up with something totally brand new, some new method, which, probably at some point led to the quote unquote conventional methods that we're used to now. But I'd like to hear your comments, maybe broadly speaking. I know it's a really kind of broad question, but broadly speaking on taking old and traditional methods of doing things and then kind of applying the science and scientific lens to it to make it new, because in the climate tech space, I feel there's a lot of room for this kind of as a whole.
Yes, for me, I mean, one of the anecdotes that kind of I always have in my work. I don't know if you remember this movie, The Gods Must Be Crazy from the 80s. I was a child at the time, and there was a scene in an African village when a light plane flew over it, and the pilot threw to the ground a Coca-Cola bottle, and they were like, what is this? Like, what do we do with this? I mean, until that moment, all the products, all the materials were all fully circular. You could produce from what was found in your surrounding. And then at the end of the life of the product, you would return the product to the ground. And all of a sudden, it was a product that did not work with this concept at all. So the rest of the movie is around like, what do we do with this? And I saw this movie as a young child, and it stayed with me, because in the end, I mean, we are on this planet as people. We have the raw materials that we can use, but we need to use them with deep respect so they can be returned to the biosphere without any damage. So the traditional technologies respected that very, very deeply. In India, for example, you had these ideas of you use only a third of what's available in as raw materials, and with that you could produce products and respect the fact that these materials need to serve generation after generation. And this is where circularity really comes from. So the understanding that if you do not fire minerals, if you do not alter them chemically, you preserve circularity that is in the core of sustainability, without huge recycling systems, without a huge collection systems, but only from the fact that you do not alter from a chemical point of view the raw materials. So I believe that we need to learn from the way things were done before the industrial era that we know today, in order so we could find a way to approach industry that fits the standards, that fits the how do you say it? The ability to replicate again and again the same processes, achieve the strength that is needed to have very reliable products, and yet understand that we can borrow the raw materials, save their chemical structure, save the carbon that was deposited within them by nature in the first place, and produce products that serve humanity, can serve very effective buildings, but in the end act like a material bank that you can really source and reproduce from it the next buildings from the next generation. So the concepts of living with a lot of respect to natural raw materials, I think, are things that we can definitely learn from. So producing under the light of the sun instead of in firing, for example, creates a whole different material culture that could be a very important step towards sustainability.
Interesting. This is pretty fascinating. I really like this. I think it's quite fascinating to think about the fact that we as a population kind of went backwards, essentially. We thought we were moving forward by creating these industrialized technologies, but it sounds like, and I'm not a chemist, so you might have to speak to this, that when things are heated in a kind of unconventional manner, or not through the sun, it can alter the chemicals, which then prevents it from being circular, right? Just the nature of doing that kind of puts an end point in the life cycle rather than just a timestamp. So I think this would be a good point to talk a little bit more about, when did you, I guess, at what point, it sounds like you had this idea that you wanted to build these sustainable products, but at what point did you really know, hey, I need to go and start Criaterra and go down this route to do it? Can you talk to us about that journey and the kind of decisions that you had to make before you said, you know what, I'm willing to leave my job to go do this, and found this company?
Yeah. So yeah, indeed, it was a journey. The first moment, kind of epiphany moment that I had was in the year 2000. I was traveling in India. It was after I did my first degree in industrial design, and I was searching for different technologies that would give me inspiration of how to approach sustainability design in a deeper way. And one of the products that is very, very simple, and yet did a profound impact on me, was the Indian clay cup, that is made from clay that you gather at the edge of a village. It's made by hand on a turn wheel, and then it is dried in the sun. And the chai vendors, they give you the cup, they serve you the tea, you drink from it, and then you just throw the cup to the ground, and it becomes ground immediately again, because there's no firing involved. So the water, which is the active part in clays and in other minerals, is not altered. So therefore, it can be returned to the ground to be ground again. So this very, very pure circularity was really a wow moment for me. And at that moment, I heard in my heart this saying of, one day I will create an industry that works on these ideas. But of course would have to be fitting the industrial thinking and the more kind of modern expectation of what you would expect from a product. And this was the year 2000. And it took 12 years until I did the next step. But to be honest, it didn't leave me. Like I had this, this sound within me that you have to go back there. There was this kind of strong moment of understanding that this should be part of my path. I dedicated the next 12 years to sustainability design. I did my master's, as I mentioned. I was a senior lecturer in sustainability design at the Holon Institute of Technology in Israel. And I was working with different companies to support them in applying sustainable methods in their practice. But this is about 10 years back, and the mindset was very, very unadvanced in this area. This is not like the last 2-3 years when everybody knows what we're talking about. The industry shifts. Everybody needs to shift from a deep way. At that point, it was like, oh, can we change one thing to make us more sustainable? Can we maybe alter the packaging to a different packaging? These were kind of the level of change the industry was ready for. And for me, that was very, very frustrating. So at one point, I understood that if I really want to make the difference that I believe we can make in industry through simple yet challenging steps of avoiding firing minerals, then I would have to take the path of an entrepreneur. And this is when actually I made that step. It was not an easy one, I have to say, but it's a long journey, especially finding ways to fund your work and to make a real venture out of it. But I could not do it. So that's
Yeah, I
really
mean,
what made it happen.
I think it's interesting. You said so that in 2012 is when you decided to really take the leap. Is that correct? The timing there.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's it's kind of interesting because obviously there wasn't necessarily a very, and there maybe still isn't for your specific sector, a very large segment of venture capital or investment companies looking to invest in, probably in particular in your region of the world. I think maybe some parts of Europe or the US might have had some of these things perhaps at the time because there was a remnants from clean tech 1.0. But could you talk to us about like how the practicality aspects of how you got started, how you decided, okay, I'm going to take my own money, find some from some friends and family, and this is how I'm going to get started to get a minimum viable product so that I can prove it to then get more money. Could you walk us through that process?
So in Israel, we had what was at the time the Israel Innovation Authority, and now it's the chief scientist of Israel. So there were small grants for beginning. I applied for, and that was the first step. I mean, the first was about $70,000. I survived for 2 years on that, so that was a very, 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 very lean startup at the time. And then later on, there were a little more advanced programs, but for those, it was only like a 50% support. So yes, I turned to friends and family for the rest of the funding. And we really did kind of one step at a time. I was still holding to my lecturing position. So I could fund my own expenses, and I kind of put every extra I had into Criaterra. The big jump for us was when we received a grant from the European Union, the Horizon 2020 grant, because until then it was a few $100,000, but the Horizon 2020 grant was already a $2.2 million grant. So that was the leap that we needed in order to really expand the team and start really moving forward. But to be honest, it was quite a few years of very challenging moments when it comes to finance and being always on the edge. Because one of the challenges were that once we had the first product and we started from the tiles, then the Israeli Innovation Authority said, well, no, you just need to produce. Now it's not R&D anymore, now it's engineering. But I think this was a huge mistake, because from a prototype to actually producing, when it's not a common industry that you could just send to an existing factory, you have to really develop the entire production system to allow producing constructive products without going beyond the boiling point of water, complete kiln-free production method. There's a lot of R&D involved, and luckily the European Union understood that this was an area that needs to be funded, and allowed us to move from what they call TRL 5 to TRL 8 with the support of their grants, and achieve the moment when the products are really market ready. So then we're ready to collaborate with producers, collaborate with market partners to bring the products to scale, and also start developing our next applications, which are cladding in masonry blocks. And yet I must stress there is a huge challenge there in the area of funding, because everybody wants to fund you after you already have revenues, but when you're a climate tech technology that needs to invest in the production line in order to get to revenues, there's a huge challenge there. And the ecosystem, as much as it's progressed, and it's progressed immensely in the last years, there is no comparison to where we were a few years ago, when everybody looked at me as if I'm completely nuts, and now people are approaching us, so it's a whole different ecosystem. And yet there are not enough structures to really support the ventures that need to bring products to life in order for us to really do the sustainable shift that we need to do. I mean, everybody knows that what will change the industry in the next 10 years, a lot of the technologies do not exist. So you cannot fund those that are only in revenues, because we will never get there. So this is this kind of catch-22 that the entire climate tech society is really challenged with, and we really must find ways to overcome this.
Yeah, no, I think it is interesting. I want to go into some more details here. I just realized we haven't really talked about precisely exactly what you're doing now. So maybe talk to us a little bit about the products in detail. What are the products? Walk us through the process of it. Obviously, we kind of have some context for it now. So walk us through the process of creating these, and then the current products you have, as well as the products you're developing and the use cases that you're looking to apply these for.
Okay, with pleasure. So first of all, the base technology of Criaterra is around producing biogeostones that allows us to create precast products for the building industry. Our materials are based on non-soluble minerals and vegetal fibers that are developed into a formulation based on an algorithm that we developed, and allows us to achieve constructive strength products without going beyond the boiling point of water. So we produced the formulation, we produced the industrial capabilities to allow us to produce precast products for the building industry. And we started from collections of wall tiles. We started with tiles, although early on we did achieve the properties that allow us to produce constructive products such as masonry blocks. but we understood that as a very small company, we have to be where innovation is driven by architects and not by the conservative people. We had to be where a small line could make an impact, and we had to be where regulations are not a very strong barrier. And this is why we started with the tiles. They're more like, as you can see also behind me, these are more kind of fashion products that allowed us, even with a very small pilot line in Israel, to have over 100 installations in Israel, in Europe, in Asia, and the first one in the US is coming very soon. And really create an impact with storytelling projects that now make the technology very ready for the next applications, such as the cladding and masonry blocks. These are, of course, more challenging from a standard point of view, from the decision makers that are the builders and not the architects, and so on. So now we are introducing these products based on the fact that we have products from the same technology in the market for over 5 years, with installations that are existing, that are fully proven to be suitable for the building environment.
So just to kind of recap this, so in order to start out small, you worked with tiles because there was maybe it's more of a decorative item. It's not exactly a structural item, and there's lack of regulation around that kind of thing, because they're not going to hopefully regulate what tile you put in your home. I hope not. But you're working now on the more structural product. So can you talk to us about the challenges of the structural product? I would assume the biggest issue is going to be the stability and the strength of these bricks or these kind of masonry products. And maybe we can even put it in the context of the recent earthquake items that have happened. I think people might be thinking about these types of things right now. Hey, we want something that's strong, that's not going to collapse. Talk to us about this, and maybe make some comparisons to other, maybe there's examples of structures that were built with this method very long time ago that are still standing and people are not aware of.
Yeah. So yes, there are many things to say. First of all, from a strength point of view, our products are as strong as concrete when it comes to bending strength, and they are 1.5 stronger than concrete when it comes to compressive strength. One of the unique properties that we have are the very, very high impact strength. So if you would drop, let's say, a concrete tile to the ground, or of course a ceramic tile to the ground, it would shatter to pieces. If you would drop a Criaterra tile to the ground, it might get a dent in the edge, but it will not shatter. So actually the resistance and impact strength is very, very high. And when it comes to earthquakes, impact strength is actually the quality that you need within products. So when it comes to stability, yes, you can find many buildings that were built from earth-based technologies. You have the rammed earth technologies that are quite common in various areas in the world also today. But the difference is that Criaterra developed an algorithm that allows us to actually restructure the earth. We break it down to its components, and we build it again, guided by our algorithm that allows us to make sure that we achieve the most compacted masonry blocks. So actually we can rely on the properties in a very different way that you could rely on a rammed earth or a traditional brick, because in those areas you would just use earth that traditionally was known as suitable for these kind of practices. And with Criaterra, we have an algorithm that allows us to adapt the technology to every location globally, because we have the guidelines of how to collect the different varieties of minerals, silts, clays, sands, and vegetable fibers that then we scan into our algorithm and build a formulation from them. And because it's based on the guidelines that were heavily researched through our R&D process, we know that we can achieve products with high strength and high stability. And this is one aspect. The other aspect is that we apply methods coming from the area of industrial design and civil engineering to achieve blocks that have sophisticated structures that allows us to be with very good thermal insulation properties. Our products can be 6 times more thermal than the common concrete blocks. And also the structures allow us to make sure that we have the most optimized mechanical properties, and also suit the level of the building when it comes to easy connection of block to block, making sure that we have spaces for the pipes, and so on and so on. So we do approach the challenge from the level of the molecule to the level of, through the level of product design, through the level of the production method, to make sure that we create a holistic solution that can really bring an innovative product to the builder and to the user in the end.
One thing I wanted to ask about is, can you explain, maybe just like for somebody who's not a scientist, the science behind why the products are stronger than concrete? You mentioned that they have the same strength or the same bendability, and then that they have they're stronger when it comes to impact. How is that possible?
So I think it's easiest to explain with the ceramics, and then we will go to cement. So what happens in ceramics, which is based on clays, and are there then fired in 1400 degrees for ceramics? What happens is that around the kind of clay molecule, a very, very thin layer of glass is created. And then the different thin layers of glass are glued together because they are melted under heat. So this is why these are very brittle connections. So we all each of us broke I don't know, dozens of ceramic cups in their lives, and we know that they shatter very easily to pieces. They do have a very strong bending strength. So if you try to break a ceramic tile with your hand, it will be impossible. The breaking strength is the bending strength is very, very strong. It's 30 megapascals, at least 3 times more than a concrete tile. But the actual connection of the different molecules is not strong. So this is why when it gets an impact, it breaks very easily. If you try to drill into a ceramic tile, we all cracked many of these in our lives as well. The Criaterra's product has the combination of, on the one hand, the calculated mix that allows us to create a very, very dense product. But then because we add the vegetable fibers, we actually get a composite material. And then the combination between the fillers, the minerals, and the vegetable fibers create kind of an armor that can react to different conditions. And this is where the resistance to impact becomes much greater, because it compensates on the brittleness of the small molecules. When it comes to cement, this is a chemical reaction that happens in very high temperatures. So in the end, it's kind of a glue that swims between the different aggregates that that create the block. So the ability of this glue to withhold again a sudden hit like an earthquake or like very strong hammer and so on is very limited. So it would under a certain amount of pressure it would crack. And what a Criaterra brick would have is kind of a much slower degradation. So therefore it could withstand the impact much longer.
Okay, great. So what I do want to talk about as well is the feedstock of these products. Can you talk about what exactly is the feedstock for what you're building? How are these created? Because I believe, if I'm not mistaken, some of the things I've read, there are some interesting ways you're able to take other materials and then break them down further and then use them. So could you talk about that a bit?
Yes. So as I mentioned before, Criaterra's technology was developed to allow the local production for local use with the materials that are available in the area of the production site. So one variety is using fully natural products. So the fillers that come from the mineral kingdoms in the area of silts, clays, and sands, together with the vegetal fiber. For the mineral, for the fillers, we use up to 70%. It can come from recycled content. We use leftovers from the quarries of the asphalt industry and the concrete industry. So one, concrete hates clays, so this is why they wash away all the clays from the aggregates, and this is a source of material that we can use and today goes to landfill in many parts in the world. And also the fines and the fine minerals are something that is not used, not in the asphalt industry and the concrete industry, and for us are very relevant. In the another aspect is that we could apply fully recycled materials. So materials that come from the source of demolished buildings, materials that come from the source of leftovers from industry. So for example, from the natural stone industry, the ceramic industry, the concrete industry, these are all non-recyclable, non-circular technologies, and there when we need to crush down the materials to certain size of aggregates, and then we could apply up to 70% of this recycled content into our products. So these are kind of the two paths, because the technology was developed to allow both what they call the biological cycle, so materials that are fully natural and can be in the end integrated back to the biosphere, or if you apply recycled content, this could be done in a technological cycle and then recycled into new products at the end of the life of the building, of the product.
Mm-hmm. And then, so I think it's safe to assume, but I just want to make sure we clarify this, that these products, if desired, could be crushed up and then remanufactured into more products, correct?
Yes, indeed. I mean, that's, again, it's a very important concept in our R&D. So at the moment, let's say at the end of our production line, if there's a color that we decide not to produce anymore, or a product fell and got a dent and so on, we crush it down, we add water, and it's fully used again as raw materials for the industrial site. And when it comes to collecting products, so for example, the cladding are based on dry installation, and then yes, you can crush them again and make new products from them fully. And that's, again, a very, very important aspect that guided our R&D.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting. I've had some other folks on the show that had more of a synthetic type of product that they created, but it was 3D printing homes and the leftovers could be used again. So I like this idea of very low waste. I think I mentioned it in the past. In the show that I grew up working for my dad in a cabinet shop, and he was very particular about how he would design the cabinet so that in many cases there was no waste. It was just sawdust, right? Because he calculated the blade width and everything just to the very last bit, which I always found pretty great. So maybe that's just kind of stuck with me, that zero waste mentality. Um, okay, I want to talk a little bit more about the business model. Again, we've got a bit of time left here. So can you help us understand? I believe, if I'm not mistaken, that your business model is not to build these products kind of as a whole, but rather to create the IP and then to license the IP out through partners that you will help them set up their manufacturing facilities. Is that correct?
Well, Criaterra would like to establish itself as a research center that produces IP, produces the knowledge, produces the entire set of practicalities that allows you to produce highly sustainable products, the entire production system, and the technology transfer file. We believe that in order to make the most impact, it makes sense to collaborate with people, with the experts in the areas of manufacturing and marketing. So to put the product to the heart of the market in the quickest way. So we see ourselves collaborating with market partners from the building industry that already have the channels that we could collaborate with. And this is how we formed our first JV in Europe, and this is how we would like to continue and collaborate with players to bring our products to the market. Saying that, there also could be a way that we would be more involved. So in the end, what we would like to do is focus on the R&D, which is what we do best. But as we were quite flexible through the years to do different things in order to make the products happen, it might be too early for some of the products to be, fully collaborated through very advanced partners. But this is what we would prefer to do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so in essence, in order to make the most impact, you'd want this to be something that's rolled out across the world, right? Because you can only have so much ability to scale yourself. My question would be around this is I have a couple questions, but I want to take it from more of a business perspective than the operations. Is what has been the challenges with fundraising for this type of model? Because it sounds like your goal would be to be an IP model, have an IP model, but there might be a little bit of a chicken and egg situation where you need to prove it with your own facilities, and then as a result, you can get, instead of a pilot, you can get a first partner like this joint venture you mentioned in Europe. Could you talk to us about the milestones that were really important for you to hit in order to receive, rounds of funding, or whether that was grant funding or venture capital? Just walk people through who have a similar model, because I've seen several people in the climate tech space who are pursuing this model. So I think it'd be very helpful to understand what are the key milestones to achieve in order to be successful building with this type of model.
So at the moment, most of the VCs still would like you to have at least $500,000 in revenue before they invest in. I mean, that's the reality of this. To achieve it, a very innovative technology without significant funding is very, very challenging. And this is the path that we as climate entrepreneurs have to find a way to win. So we are trying to tackle it with different methods. One is, as I mentioned, creating a JV actually with a market partner, because then you could, once you have orders, you could find funding for even an intermediate line that would allow you to achieve this kind of revenues. And this is one path that we are exploring. Another path is to collaborate with a very professional production partner that also has an investment arm. So then there is a win-win there. And the third is to work with funding that is kind of smaller funding and do things the way we're doing now, is having a pilot line that brings us to kind of more storytelling presence and allows us to hopefully find the few VCs that understand that you have to invest a little bit earlier after you have a real validation of the product. So to be honest, we are still looking for the path to really make it happen. We have some strategies that look very promising, but we're still always kind of challenged by this idea that you have to have significant revenues in order to get real capital, and this is something that we all need to be creative to find ways to overcome.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's quite difficult. Anything that involves hardware is not easy in particular, right? I do think that there's a movement, if you will, around people who are looking at VC and saying, hey, this model of grow extremely quickly, here's your milestones to hit with customer acquisition, etc. Those just aren't going to be applicable for hardware. And obviously you're kind of in the middle where you have hardware, yet you're aiming to license it out, right? So you have to build the hardware, improve it, and then you license it, the IP. But I still think it falls into that bucket, right? It's very, very, very difficult. So what have been, I guess, the biggest aids in all of this, like the biggest things that you learned that you were like, you had thought, hey, this is how it'll be, but it turns out it's different. What are some of those biggest things that helped you along the way, or learnings that you had along the way going through this process of building the organization?
I think I will ask you to repeat the question because I'm not sure exactly what what kind of answer you're
I want to understand there's really two parts. So we'll focus on the first part. What has been the biggest aid and help to you in growing the company, where you had a partner say, yeah, we'll do this, or you had somebody give you a certain piece of advice that was very helpful for you in growing the company?
Okay. I mean, the obvious is as I said before, is the grant from the European Union. But yeah, well, okay. I think maybe that's. I think that the day that we had a serious brainstorm with an advisory committee, we introduced the kind of dilemma that we had. Do we continue with the constructive products, or do we develop an MVP through decorative products? So, and I think the conclusion of that day, understanding that it's better to wait with the kind of full, because obviously wall tiles have less impact than masonry blocks, but the understanding that we have to be patient with the product that could bring more impact in order to go enough steps with quote unquote simpler product, because it's not, I mean, in some areas it's even harder, but start with the simpler product to introduce to the market, and then based on its success, move to the next level. I think that that was one of the most important moments of the kind of the company crafting its path forward.
Mhm. Interesting. No, that's quite helpful to hear. I think it is difficult. I mean, obviously, you have this goal of the true impact you're looking to make, but you have to then try to navigate the practicalities of how do we get there without dying, right? In terms of we need to succeed at least to some extent right now in order to get to the long-term point. So it's an interesting situation. Many people, if they were just regular entrepreneurs, not exactly caring about the climate, they might just give up and try a new idea, right? But you have this thing in your bones that you know is right. Um, what would be so the second thing I wanted to ask in that part was of all the assumptions that you had going into building this company, I'm sure there was several. What were the biggest things that you learned that were totally different than you thought?
I mean, there are maybe two paths. One is there's one thing to achieve this prototype that has all the properties, all the looks, all the qualities that you were really aspiring for many months and really dedicating your work. And then from there to making an fully industrial product and working business. There is such a long and complex journey that has to evolve so many capabilities and kind of the ability to be very, very flexible about your conclusions and to kind of again and again agree to let go of everything you know, let go of everything you decided, and rethink again what would really make this venture succeed, what would make this venture become a company that brings impact to the world and not just a product and not just a story. And kind of evolving different capabilities, if it's capabilities from the areas of design thinking, if it's capabilities from the area of business, if it's the capabilities from the area of finance, and looking from all these aspects all the time to understand how you can restructure the actions to really move to the next step. So for me, in the beginning, I only saw, the sustainable product, the impact, the vision, the story. But today, I mean, this is a company that is looking at the economical opportunity no less than the impact opportunity, because the only way to really make a climate venture happen is that you really kind of put these two aligned and do not compromise on any aspect on any of them in any moment.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, this is very good. I think a lot of people, I believe this is the ultimate reason why climate tech is taking off now, is because you have a number of people who really pointed out that climate tech isn't about a trade-off. It's about having both, right? You can have the same price for something that's better, right? In the case of many products, especially products like these, where usually the price parity is there, and obviously it's a more high quality product. It's better for the environment. And then you've got these people just talking about this is also a huge economic opportunity. There has to be those two things, right? Because investors are investors at the end of the day, and they have a responsibility to make money and make returns for their LPs, right? So I think it's interesting. It's an interesting time, and I think it's very good advice that you've just shared with people to focus on taking their dream and their aspirations of making a climate impact, but also pair it with practical and business sense, right? You can't just, it's not a charity. It has to be a business, correct? Right. So awesome. Very good. Well, any closing thoughts you want to leave us with, or things you're excited for the future? Any final items?
So yes, I think Criaterra, I think I hope it came through my words, has been very, very honest about its journey to bring the most sustainable, circular, reliable, and also cost-efficient products to the market. And products like ours, and there are many people today looking to bring new products and better products to the market, need partners. I tend to say, the saying that it needs a village to grow a child. So it needs a community to grow circular, sustainable products and bring them to reality. And I really urge more flexibility, more creativity in the way financing these kind of products is approached. If it's microfinancing, like was relevant in maybe a decade ago for other communities, in methods that allow a lot less of a risk, but allow ventures like ours to progress and to focus on our work and not be so worried all the time about financing, but to really find win-win situations that allow the funding to work with success points, with milestones achieved, and so on. So really the work of entrepreneurs that are doing amazing work at Criaterra and in other parallel ventures could really create the future that we are all working to create. I mean, we have a few years to do that, and we need the venture community to really think creatively of how we can walk this path together.
Yeah, interesting. It's definitely a journey of everybody working together. If we don't work together, we're not going to get very far, right? Which is something I'd say seems pretty apparent in the context space. A lot of people seem to be pretty collaborative and working together, but obviously always room for improvement. But this has been really great. I feel like there's many more things we could have talked about, but we're out of time here. So I appreciate you taking the time to join us, and I'm excited to see where you guys go.
Thank you. Indeed, it's a pleasure, and let's hope 10 years from now we will have a meeting in a building built from Criaterra products from from A to Z.
I agree. That'd be amazing. It's very good. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
All right, thank you guys so much for listening to this episode with Adital. If you enjoyed, please do share it with somebody. Leave us a review. It really does help grow the show. As you know, we put in quite a lot of time to make the show possible, so really do appreciate your help and support from the listener side. Do connect with Adital as well if you'd like to learn more. Reach out to their follow them on their website and see if there's anything that maybe there's ways you can collaborate. Maybe you're a potential capital partner looking to help them with their funding round. Definitely reach out. And if this is your first time listening, please do subscribe and tap the bell for notifications. Quick note on our next episode, we will be joined by Chris Gray from Renew Communities. They are a real estate developer that does comprehensive retrofits on their properties to make them essentially green buildings, is the easiest way to describe it. And I know this may sound pretty straightforward overall, but it was actually a really, really great conversation. We ended up touching on some interesting angles on the IRA bill that could be interesting for others in the space, in particular around some of the incentives to make these buildings green. So overall, really enjoyable conversation with Chris coming up. Stay tuned for that. And thanks again for joining us on the Clean Techies podcast, and we will see you next time.